name. Chris, sorry, Kristen, can you start, please?
Yes, if I can unmute. Hi, I'm Kristen Anderson. I'm with the CERA program. Am I just introducing myself?
Yes,
Okay.
maybe, you know what, you could tell us something that you enjoy.
I enjoy being out on the lake, as my family lives on a lake, so I'm usually out and about on the water. So.
Okay, thank you. Yvette?
Hi, my name is Yvette Atkinson. I'm with the CERA program at Salvation Army, and I enjoy watching Korean zombie movies.
Okay. Sharon?
Sharon Lapidus, Program Director at SOS Community Services. And I don't know, what do I enjoy doing? I guess I enjoy walking, going for long walks and listening to like podcasts and things like that.
Okay. Andrea?
There we go. That works.
Hi, I'm Andrea. Oh, Andrea or Andrew?
Andrea?
Okay. Hi, I'm Andrea, and I'm working with the CERA program with SOS. And I love to walk. I enjoy walking.
Yes.
LaShonda?
Hello, good morning. I'm LaShonda, and I'm with the CERA program as well, and I love to paint.
Alexis?
Hi, I'm Alexis Smith, and I'm with the CERA program as a reviewer, and I like shopping. Every shopping, but except grocery shopping.
Kiera?
Hi, my name's Kiera. I'm with the CERA program with SOS. And something that I enjoy is trying new foods and shopping as well.
Marla?
Good morning, everyone. I'm Marla Conkin, Director of Social Services with the Salvation Army, and I enjoy reading a good book.
Amy?
Hi, I'm Amy. Just joined the CERA program with SOS, and I enjoy too many things, but I guess reading a good book and taking a good walk on a nice day.
Okay. Gabriella?
I am Gabby. I'm a diversion specialist at Hawk. I just really like napping.
TJ?
Sorry, I almost forgot to unmute myself. I'm TJ. I am an HRS caseworker with Hawk and working with the CERA program. Something I really enjoy is rock climbing.
Awesome. SJ?
Hi, I'm SJ. I am the Housing Resource Specialist and HCV Lead for Housing Access for Washtenaw County. And Gabby stole mine. I love taking naps as well, but I also like taking naps with my cat. So I'm going to add that little doodad in there.
All right. Morgan?
Hey everyone, my name is Morgan. I am the Human Services Manager for Washtenaw County, and I'm helping to coordinate the CERA program. My perfect thing is I enjoy brunch and a cute outfit and a shopping spree all together.
All right. Tia?
Hi, my name is Tia. I'm working the CERA program with SOS, and I love to sing, especially karaoke, and I love to read books.
Awesome. Richard?
Hi, good morning, y'all. I'm Richard, and I love playing guitar. I love horses and horseback riding.
Elise?
Hi, I'm Elise. I'm working with the CERA program from SOS, and I like paint by numbers because I like art, but I'm not creative enough to draw anything freehand, so I just fill in the lines.
Rhonda?
Hi, I'm Rhonda Weathers from SOS Community Services, and I'm assuming we're doing something we love.
Yes.
I love travel and the ocean.
Isaac? I'm not sure if he can hear.
He can't talk.
He's should have dialed in. Okay. Jacob? They're at computers where I think they didn't connect. So, but Basic, Isaac, and Jacob, they're both our housing resource specialists from Hawk, and they are as a reviewer for the CERA program. I don't have the agenda in front, but I think I'm going to just turn it back over to Morgan. Is it over to you? No, sorry. Let's see. Where's the ledger? Sorry, y'all. Okay, ledger review. So Gabriella, I'm gonna turn it over to you.
Hello. So I'm going to be going over just a basic ledger review as well as a template that was created to make it a little easier and to make sure everybody's reading ledgers on the same standard and just following the same procedure to match the CERA guidelines, as well as just when you submit your files, having the math right there. So anybody reviewing the file, it's very easy for them to just see it and go forward with the calculations instead of trying to figure out what happened and how you got those answers. So the easiest way to actually do this is by seeing a ledger and seeing the calculations happen. So we're just going to go over that. I'm just going to screen share so we can do that. Okay. Now let me pull up. So this is a ledger we're going to be looking at. It's a McKinley ledger, and you can see, which I will also share the Excel template that we have on how to calculate ledgers. So we're going to look at when to start this ledger, which we can see this person actually had an EDP payment, which is what all of these are. So we're going to have to use our second Excel sheet, which calculates for EDP payments. So we're going to be able to go back to when the tenant first fell behind, and it's going to look at the last time they zeroed out their balance. So we're in April right now. So let's go all the way back to March 2020, looking at the last time that they zeroed out this balance. Okay. Oh, that's the wrong one. Okay. And so what we have this Excel sheet that we're going to be using, and we're going to go to the EDP did not zero out tab, because looking at the ledger, they had additional charges. And so when they received the EDP payment, either they had a tenant portion, they had utilities or pet fees, something they owed that did not let the ledger EDP or zero out with that. But because of the different policies switching between EDP and CERA, you're going to have to do the calculations a little different. So in this first tab, which I have a full document that's about 4 pages long that I'll also send out about how to use this Excel sheet to just make sure that all your calculations are correct and the correct numbers are going in each one. So we can switch between the ledger looking at March 2020. So starting back then, we're going to see the rental amount of $989, and that's going to be automatically filled out into there. And then, so you're just essentially going to look at the different ledgers and take them and plug them in. So we have the utility fee of $39.58. And you just want to make sure you're inputting the numbers like directly from the ledger. You can see the late fees cross out in here. So you can either calculate them or you can leave them off if you know they immediately cross out, and it doesn't have to go in the Excel sheet, but it could. We do have a special tab in this as well on the sheet for McKinley ledgers in general, because if McKinley is one of the only properties that ran this program, but you can see, let me show you. Okay, so they had a 5% early discount if people made payments on time, and so they would take off a certain amount. But then if the person did not pay on time or didn't fully zero out the balance, they would reverse it. So in this extra tab at the end for McKinley, just tracking all of them to make sure they zero out in the end. Most of the time they do, but we have had a few occasions where they didn't reverse the payment. And so if they're being extra charged or anything like that, you can always contact the leasing agent, and I've had them fix ledgers if they had wrong calculations. But then just moving forward, we were here on the ledger. So those balance out. There's another late fee for $50, and then that zeroes out. The reason we're not calculating these late fees at this time is because this portion of the ledger was covered through EDP. And per that policy, per the EDP policy, any late fees had to be waived. So when we're starting to calculate late fees to actually go into the CERA worksheet, you're going to start counting after the time of the EDP payments. But one thing that has to be considered if you're looking back at EDP ledgers is, for this one in particular, they didn't receive the EDP payment until January 4th. That doesn't mean you're going to only count those late fees from January 4th on. You're going to look at the time of when the EDP calculation stopped itself, and then you're going to move forward. Because for this particular case, I looked back at the EDP document, and the ledger that was calculated only went through November. So December, they were allowed to charge those late fees, and December late fees will be considered on the CERA application or on the CERA worksheet. So then just going through with the Excel sheet, you're going to put the rental amounts, and I believe there was 8 months calculated for this. And you're going to want to make sure you just copy the numbers directly from the ledger, and it always checks, or it always is best to like double check. But they were behind 8 months, and then just, so you don't have to do the math, Excel does it for you. And then just to, so the total rent owed during those 8 months that they participated in EDP was $7,912. And then we can also count the utilities and put those in the worksheet as well. And then, so that at least gives a good example of that. And then you're just going to auto sum those. I'm not going to go through the whole ledger, just outlining the entire thing, but you're going to get that amount. And per the policy of EDP, you're going to subtract the utilities from the payments that are made first, and then you're going to apply the payments to the rental charges. Post or non-EDP, you're going to do the same thing, and it's a little simpler. You're going to list out all of the rental charges. So say, I'm just going to make up a ledger right now. Say their rental amount was $700 and they're 5 months behind on rent. And let's say they were at a property where their set utility charges were $40 a month, and they had late fees of $15. And they made 3 payments. Okay, so you're going to take these amounts, you're going to add up all of the rental charges, all of the utility charges, late fees, payments. And then you're just going to take this final number of rental charges and just do, and then minus the payments that were made. And then that number, whatever you get from this, is going to go directly into the worksheet for rental arrearage. And then your late fees is going to go in the late fee portion, because I can pull up the CERA worksheet too. Because how the CERA worksheet asks for rental arrearages, court costs, and late fees on the first document, you're going to be able to put how much was owed in rental arrearages, the late fees, and then the court costs themselves, and then the worksheet will calculate it itself. And then the second page is where you're going to put the utility charges. Even if they're set utilities, is the difference between EDP and CERA. So you're going to put those utilities in there. The difference between utilities is if the person has like a DTE bill they owe utilities on, that's going to go and it's going to say paid to DTE, the amount and the account. But if, say, on the ledger, you see charges for electric, water, and sewer in 3 separate amounts, those can be lumped together as just one utility payment as long as they're all going to the same landlord. So any utilities, I can show you on here. Like this one has 2 separate utility fees. One is for, this is they're like trash, sewer, and then this one is for I believe it's water. And so between these, both of these amounts, it wouldn't have to be separated between trash and sewer and then water. Since they're all being paid to the landlord, they could be lumped together in this utility section as long as it's on the same ledger. Sorry, my dog's barking. Okay, and
Tell her, Athena, tell her.
she's being very barky right now. She just woke up from a nap and chose violence. Okay, so okay, so any ledgers with EDP and CERA payments are going to be, I wouldn't say a little more difficult. I would say they just need a little more attention because you need to focus on the different charges that actually exist on the ledger. And if somebody receives EDP payment, there's a couple things you want to look out for, which this one is a perfect example of what the landlord did correctly. So you're going to see like Hawk EDP settlement, and they waived the amount of $400. Per EDP, they had to waive a certain portion of rent, and you want to make sure that that portion of rent was waived, as well as all late fees needed to be waived, and then court cost above $150. As well as one thing to keep in mind when filling out this ledger or the charges worksheet, looking at this, they received the maximum amount of EDP assistance, and this all totals out to $4,850, which was the max amount people can receive. But this whole payment should not be applied to the total as one. And the reason it is because that payment, although it was received as a lump sum, was broken up to 3 separate things, and it needs to be applied to those 3 separate things. So in that, like, say their court costs were $161, as McKinley Properties has. They received a payment of $150, and then they waived $11. So based on that payment through EDP, this is where that payment should be calculated. Oh, that's supposed to be negative. and they waived $11. So applying the payments to the correct amount, you should be seeing the ledgers zero out in certain portions. And then they capped out at the $3,500 for pre-utilities. So then you can do minus $350 in that amount. And you get the amount that was left over, which that amount that was paid by EDP can actually be considered as a payment pre-EDP. And then if they received rent moving forward, that amount is going to be calculated in the payments post-EDP portion. So whatever payments they made after will include that $1,200. If they receive the maximum amount for rent moving forward, it would be calculated here. And then another thing to also look at is like other charges. So CERA does not assist with pet fees and a couple other fees, like if the only utility charge that the tenant has is sewer and it's not associated with any other utility, per the CERA guidelines, that falls straight to the tenant portion. So that's where you're going to calculate like other charges and say they had a $25 pet fee 4 times or 3 times for 3 months. That amount is automatically going to be added to the tenant portion because CERA unfortunately can't assist with those charges. And then you're just going to see the late fees post EDP, court costs post EDP, in case there is 2 sets of court costs because it was taken to court the second time around for non-payment. You would put the second one in this category because the first one, or the first set of charges between what EDP paid as well as the landlord forgiveness already zeroed out. And so that would go in the second charge just to keep everything set. And then the reason you're going to separate the utilities as well is because these were paid off by payments pre-EDP. And then the utilities post-EDP are going to be put in the worksheet so those can be assisted with. If you see that there's rent charges pre-EDP, and then they made payments, and then they also received the maximum amount of back EDP assistance, which would be $3,500, and they are still an amount, that rental arrearage amount is still owed, and that can just be added to the rent post-EDP because it's still a rental arrearage they're behind. So if this number doesn't zero out, whatever's left just carries into the rental arrearage portion. So it's the total amount being assisted with. And yeah, that's all I have on ledgers. I can send out the documents of how to read everything and what different categories are. Are there any questions?
Gabby, I do. Can you show an example of the CERA worksheet? If you can plug those numbers into the CERA worksheet so they know how to complete it.
Yes, let me pull that up.
Thank you.
Okay. So when looking at the CERA worksheet, oh, this one already has some information plugged in. Okay. But you're going to have the income based here, and the income itself has its own worksheet that you're going to fill out. It basically asks for name, source, the amount they earn, frequency, and then the worksheet itself totals the income based on how much they get a week or bi-weekly, monthly, however it's calculated. So if somebody earned SSI, you would just put name, SSI, amount, and then that would be changed to monthly instead of weekly. And then it would calculate the amount and then it adds up. The good thing about the CERA income worksheet is it actually imports straight to the CERA worksheet itself. And then, so what you're going to do, this number right here is the total rental arrearage and late fees. So although it's separated, that's incorrect. Okay. So although it's separated in that Excel sheet between the two, you're just going to add them together for this particular portion. It's here that you're going to separate it out, and you're going to input the rental arrearage amount you got into this space, and then you're going to put the late fees after March 2020 in this space. And a couple things when you do late fee calculations. Say you get a ledger and the person's 2 months behind, but 2 months ago they fell behind a little bit and had some late fees there. Those late fees have already been paid. So you're going to start from the point that they zeroed out last and move forward. So if they were only behind 2 months and had 2 late fees in the amount of $40, you would only put $80 in late fees, regardless of whatever late fees were charged prior. And then you're going to put the court costs in this section. Typically, if there's double court costs, the first one was probably already paid by a previous program, but that would have to be based off the ledger calculations. And then you're going to put the rental amount based off the or the ledger, whatever it says on the ledger as the rental amount is going to go into this section. And then for calculating the amount of months the person's behind, instead, so say the person has been behind since March 2020, instead of just putting 13 months, if say this person is only behind $3,000, you're going to take this amount and divide it by their current monthly rental portion, and that is going to go in the month field. So even if they've been making partial payments and been behind the past 13 months, based on the amount they are behind, they're only behind 5 months. And so that's important. That's gonna actually change the amounts, because if you put 13 months here, they wouldn't be eligible for the full rental portion because the guideline follows for only 12 months of back rent assistance. And so you wanna make sure that if they're only 5 months behind per like the actual amount they're behind, that they're receiving the assistance they can for those 5 months. And then, so once you put all of that in, it's going to have the just county bedroom size, family size, and all of these just kind of adjust based on fair market rate and all of those. And then once, I don't have the full sheets completed, but then once you put everything in, it'll just pull up the amount they can receive for rental arrearage and back rent, and then future rent, and then as well as like how many months they can receive with recertification, which will come later. This is the tenant portion. So if their unit is above like fair market rate or anything like that, it's not fair market rate. If it's above the amount that you're allowed to pay per the guidelines for that specific unit, that will fall into the tenant portion as well. So, and then it will automatically calculate how much they can receive for past due rent, future rental assistance, late fees, and court costs. Late fees themselves are capped at $400. And then court costs are capped at $150. And I know this question came up the other day, but in the actual like not worksheets, the applications themselves, by initialing it, there's a guideline in it that the landlords are agreeing to waive any late fees beyond 400, as well as any court cost beyond 150. And then there's a different worksheet that can be used for subsidized portions. So if the tenant portion, so like this person, their tenant portion is $261 and they made a $200 payment, we would only be assisting with like the $61 in back rent owed and not the entire rental amount, because they should have been still receiving payment from their voucher. And so we're not going to double pay on anything like that. And then the utility worksheet is where you'll see electric, water, sewer, trash. Trash is the one, if they only have a trash utility bill, it says in the guideline that you can't assist with that unless if it's grouped up with like another utility bill. So if the landlord charges water and trash, then it could be together. And then when you're calculating, you would put just the provider, who the check, past due balance. And then when you're calculating anything based on the ledger, you could just put that it's paid to the landlord and then the amount. And this is where you'll see like water and sewer. After playing with it, as long as water and sewer are both going to the landlord themselves, you can put it on the same line and just the total amount of both in this area instead of separating them, because they're both going to the landlord as one big payment. Any other questions or?
Hi, Gabby. I have questions.
Yes.
Questions, multiple. Okay. Okay. So first one, when we're looking at the EDP, so going off that ledger, I have a copy. It doesn't break down where the payments are going to. So if we're coming in looking at a ledger and it just says payment, 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 how do we know where to put it on your spreadsheet as to where those payments were made with the EDP monies? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I think. So are you meaning like where do you know to apply them, or where do you know like where the ledger splits between pre and post EDP?
So on this ledger, it just has a bunch of charges that equal out to $4,850. It does not say, $800 went to utilities, $400 went to rent. It doesn't break it down. It just has a bunch of charges of where EDP paid. So when we go in and we put it on your spreadsheet, how do we know where to put those payments? You know what I'm saying?
Okay.
Yeah.
So part of knowing where to put the payments is going over the EDP policy, as well as just looking at the original EDP worksheet. For this particular one, I just downloaded the worksheet file and I saw that typically if the amount is fully maxed out at, because this payment equals to 4,850, which was the max for EDP, it's broken down into the 3 sections that EDP worksheet broke it into, which was back rent, future rent, and court cost. So 150 of this automatically is going to be applied to the past court cost option. And then the 3,500, which was the maximum cap for back rent assistance through the EDP portion, is automatically going to be applied to this section. It's going to be a payment pre-EDP. And so you would put that there. And then for a payment post-EDP is where you would put the remaining 1,200. And so if you ever have like difficulties knowing where to split, because say it wasn't a full cap payment of the 4,850 and it was less, you may have to like pull up the actual EDP file and see what amount goes to back rent and what amount goes to future rent. But you would put.
Quick question. Do you, and sorry to put you on the spot on this one, but do you have an EDP worksheet available to you so that you can show folks? Because a lot of the people didn't work during the EDP program, so I have no idea what you're talking about.
Yep, let me pull one up. Nope.
Thank you. And again, sorry to put you on the spot. I didn't realize that we needed to have that.
That's not it. My math for this one actually had a worksheet attached to it, so I will show that. Okay. So this is actually, and I can send this out as an example too. This was the worksheet itself filled out in this template, doing the actual math calculations and getting the total. But these are, this is an EDP worksheet itself. It looks very similar to the CERA worksheets, except it asks for a little less. So you had the rental arrearage portion, the months they were behind, rental amount, as well as gross income. And so it calculated everything. And then at the bottom is where you're going to see the divide in payments. So you have the past due rental assistance they received, the future rental assistance, as well as the court cost. And this is where you get the total amount that was applied to those 3 separate payment portions. Are there any other questions?
Hi, I have a question.
Yes.
Or questions. I'm a little bit confused, and so I'm just going to ask a couple basic questions. So I haven't worked with this EDP before. So what I'm understanding is that EDP happened for a certain part of time. Like it was like, for what are those? Like, was 3 months or 4 months, or how long was the EDP?
EDP ran from, I believe we started August 3rd. We started taking cases, and then it ran to the last day we had to have our worksheets out was December 31st.
Okay. And then, so that's EDP, and then there's like a gap, and then CERA picks up in March, right?
Yes, during that
Following
gap
March?
time, people were able to receive assistance through other funding sources of like CSBG or ESG.
Okay, so when you have, there's 2 kinds of worksheets I noticed on the worksheet thing. There's, is it like it's EDP, no, there's no EDP, right? And then there's pre-EDP or post-EDP not zeroed out,
Yes.
right? Okay, so if someone's going to just do the CERA program and there's no EDP, you start that March 30th or 13th, or when they zero out after that.
Yes,
right?
You'll focus on when they last zeroed out. And then
Okay.
this one, even if they received EDP, but they zeroed out at some point, you would use this one instead. Because
Okay.
if they zeroed out or went negative with the ledger, then you don't have to go back and split the payments. You can just go from where they zeroed out and move forward.
Even if they had CERA or EDP, right?
Yes. If they had EDP and then either their future rental payment or they made their tenant portion and it zeroed out, then you can just move forward and then not use that in your calculations.
Okay. So then there's a thing called pre-EDP and post-EDP. So what is there like an EDP, just EDP, or is there like a big line that says, you know, December 1st is pre-EDP, December 2nd is post-EDP, or is there like a time frame of EDP?
Yeah, so looking at the time frame of when it becomes pre to post EDP is really going to be dependent on when the person received EDP assistance. Because say a person got assistance in October, that line and their ledger that was calculated went through October. That's going to be the line of pre and post EDP. Because say the ledger from November and December had late fees, that's going to be calculated for CERA. And also utilities. Utilities and late fees are really where you need to divide it between pre and post EDP, just because of the two differences in the policies and how to calculate those amounts. But there's no set divide between each case, and it needs to be determined on a case-by-case basis where pre and post EDP is.
Okay, but if someone has a calculation for, so they could actually, if I think I'm hearing you correctly, some people got EDP payments several months after the rent was due. Is that right? Or no?
Some, yeah, because the check may have got like lost in the mail or things like that. It may have just been a little delayed where another month that wasn't calculated may not have been looked at.
Okay, so I don't know if there's anybody else in the same situation, but I think I'm just going to need another sort of training or just some time with someone who knows what's going on to help me sort of kind of piece together that EDP versus CERA portion, because I kind of conceptually have the idea that they're different, but I'm still a little stuck in pulling them apart. So, well, partly because I haven't done one before, but I'm going to need some help doing one of those. If that makes sense.
So the goal is our current staff that work the EDP program before, our housing resource specialists, those cases we would like to assign to them because they're more experienced with the policy for EDP. Those who are coming in under manpower and SOS, the goal is just to assign those cases to, whereas those customers did not receive EDP. But again, it's going to be, we meet as a team. We have our meetings on Monday, and I think that's probably another discussion piece that we'll discuss on this coming Monday. But as of right now, when I'm assigning those cases out, the goal is for the staff that's from manpower is just to get the regular CERA program where they don't have to worry about EDP.
That makes me very happy for right now. Okay,
But things change. Again, it
no,
may change within a week
and
or
I
2 weeks.
already have a case that has EDP. So
it's probably are you working on the paper one?
Yeah.
Is it a paper? That's probably why. But again, and because again, you didn't have access to the portal right away. But again, the goal is people that's coming in under manpower, we would like to just have them work the regular CERA cases, CERA ledgers, not the EDP.
So since I've been assigned this, I mean, should I still just try and figure out how to do it, or just focus on?
I would say because you already have that one, yes. But moving forward, when the cases get assigned, I'll make sure that you don't have an EDP one as of right now.
Okay.
Yeah, remember that we're working on that one together. So any questions you have about that one, you can always come in and ask me about it.
Thank you, SJ.
Okay, then SJ, you're my woman. Thank you, Sarah. Thank you, Gabby. Thank you, Shayna.
Gabriella, I had a quick question, if you don't mind. I saw that your notes on the side said you'd been working on that ledger that you just shown us for 4 hours. Just to get an idea, is that normal? I want to know what would be normal and what's like, okay, I'm like so lost, I need to reach out. So I just want to have an idea of what's an expected for somebody that's not, super, ahead of everything and understands everything like yourself, what would be a normal expectation of you're on the right track, but just keep with it?
Yeah. So that ledger, I would say the reason it actually took me 4 hours is because while I was doing it, I was actually creating this spreadsheet to make it a lot simpler moving forward. So when you actually work on the ledgers, just reading them and inputting them in this manner, it should take you about 20 minutes. I think that ledger took a lot more time because I was breaking it down and actually getting to a system that would be able to help people across the board just by inputting things. But once you just input them, I've seen and I've done ledgers in about 10, 15, 20 minutes. It just really depends because some you'll see they'll be 2 months behind on rent, they've made no payments, and there's 2 late fees. And so you just add the 2 numbers up and put them in, and it'll take maybe 10 minutes to complete the entire worksheet. But then some are a lot more complex, and like McKinley needs their own separate tab because they have a lot of payment reversals and adding and credits and things like that. So it really depends, but with this system and using the spreadsheet, you should be able to complete ledgers in about 20 minutes. And then once you get used to it, it'll just get a lot faster.
I have a quick question as well. Would it be possible for someone to send out, maybe you or someone else, a copy of a ledger, maybe the one that you were using for this, and then the CERA worksheets that have the answers basically, so someone can go through and do the math themselves and then make sure that they did it correctly because they have all the answers there later, just for like training purposes. So I know some people will learn better by actually doing something. So having that in front of them and then being able to go back and check for that one example might be helpful.
Yeah, I can send out the ledger as well as the worksheet and everything that was completed for that particular one.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
Yeah, I do got a question.
Yes.
Okay, so when we're looking at a ledger that has payments that were before March 13th, 2020, like this particular ledger, she had a $200 charge. Are we going to use payments that she made? I think I remember hearing somebody say this, but just want to double check. If they had a balance coming in prior to March 13th, 2020, some of the payments that they made in future months, are we applying those payments to that previous balance?
Yes. This ledger, let me just go to it. So yeah, this ledger, they started March with like a $200 balance prior to March 13th. That was a pet fee actually. So it's not something we can assist with, but it's something that their own payment that they made can balance out. So this payment, if you're going to subtract it from that initial amount, when you put it in the worksheet, that amount owed was $200. So this payment is $250. So if that payment is paying off that pet fee, instead of putting the whole $250 in the worksheet, you're just going to put $50 if it balances out. And then any payments can just deduct the pre-March 13th balance as well. And then so say they were behind a couple months and before March 13th and owed like $3,000 prior to March 13th. And then in that time, the amount of payments they made is only $2,000. That $1,000 that's left over would automatically fall to the tenant portion if they haven't made enough payments to actually match and take out that pre-March 13th balance. Any other questions?
Thanks, Gabby. So I think, let me go to the chat so I can see what the next. So the next is required documents review, also from Hawk.
And that's also Gabriella.
Okay, let me actually screen share again. I'm just gonna go over the documents that are required and what to look for. It is going to, y'all may have seen this PowerPoint already if you looked over the first week of training videos. So I'm just gonna go over and do a quick review of the documents that are required. One corner. Okay. So the first document that's going to need to be uploaded is a notice of past due rent. For this program, it can be a notice to quit, a demand for possession, court summons, a judgment they received, or even if they have a handwritten note from their landlord that says like, you are behind on rent, you owe this, and they don't do like an official 7-day notice, as long as they have a ledger to support that they are behind on rent, those are acceptable forms of notice of past due rent. Moving on, you're going to need an ID for the head of household. Since COVID is making it hard for a lot of people to get to like the Secretary of State or the DMV or anything to update, expired IDs and licenses will be accepted forms of identification. We can also do like any official state ID, like we can do HMIS IDs, passports, things like that. The only thing that needs to be checked with IDs is if the address on the ID does not match their current unit, they're going to need a proof of residency, which can be a DTE bill, a phone bill, a insurance policy for their apartment complex or anything like that. For proof of residency, the only thing we really can't use is the lease itself, since we're proving they live at that residence. Yes, if the demand, or not the demand for possession, if the court summons was also like had personal service to it and was hand delivered, that can account for a proof of residency too, since it was given to them at that residence. You're also going to need income documents for household members over the age of 18. So if you're receiving unemployment, you're going to need screenshots from unemployment, the benefit award letter, pay stubs. You're going to need 30 days worth. So you're going to want to check the top corner to make sure actually, if they're paid bi-weekly, that the weeks line up and it equals to 30 days. If it's SSI, SSDI, anything like that, you're going to want to get their award letter. And when calculating income, you have to make sure you're looking at the gross income amount and not the net income amount for all of these. Another thing is you need to make sure that their name is on them. If they submit pay stubs and the name is not on them, you can like click the request button in the portal and like tell them what you need and just say like pay stubs need name or anything like that. One form of income we might be seeing a lot is like unemployment. And I'll actually show you an example. So if somebody just submits this for unemployment, you're going to need to ask for more. Because yes, it has the payment amounts and when they were issued, but we don't know who this belongs to. So they're going to need to submit more of a portion with this that will have like their social or their name or something connecting it to this, which even here they need to screenshot higher because their name should be up here and they're going to need to send that portion. So with any of the income documents, it needs to have the identifying name on it so we know who to connect it to, especially if you are seeing a household with like multiple adult members all having a form of income. It all needs to be identified of who it belongs to. Moving on, you're going to need a copy of the lease if a written one is available. You will see some places that they've lived for like 3 years or so, and this is very common at like Pascal Apartments or any Joe Mar property, where they'll stay at a place and they'll sign a couple years ago and they have the initial lease for one amount, but every single year the rent increased by $20 to $30. And so you're going to need those rental increase letters too to include with the lease to justify why they're being charged $725 when their lease says $650. And so you're going to need to just add those all together to the file and be uploaded. Okay. And then utility and internet bills, if people are submitting those to get assistance with like DTE, Comcast, anything like that, it needs to make sure that the amount due is on there, as well as the name and then the account number, so it can actually be inputted. And then for documents of like COVID hardship, those would be either the letters that outline the like 3 things that people can say. Either it was like they lost income due to COVID, it was increased expenses, or they had an amount over like $500. So they can just, it doesn't have to be a full page of somebody explaining what happened and why. It can just say like, I was making this much working 40 hours a week, but due to COVID, my hours got cut to 15, and just sign their name at the bottom. And that would be acceptable. They don't really have to go much into depth. It can just be a really simple thing. Or if somebody submits anything from unemployment, either their award letter and screenshot from their account, that will count as a documentation of a COVID hardship as well. Other documents we're going to look at is ledgers and leases. Again, they're going to need to submit the leases to make sure that the amount on the leases are being charged. This is also relevant to make sure like the way the amounts are, or the way the charges are distributed. So some leases, so that like other charges portion of the ledger, or of the like Excel sheet for the ledger, some leases will say that those charges are paid before rent. And so any payments that were made, those charges can be taken out first. And so instead of falling to the tenant portion, that portion will be paid by their payments, and that amount will fall into the rental arrearage owed. But it's just a matter of like reading the lease. If there isn't a current lease and they're charging one amount and nobody's able to provide documents for it, as long as both the landlord and the tenant agree that that is the rental amount, then that's fine. Because written leases happen. Some people don't have leases for complexes, but they do have to agree on the amount. It also can help determining like charges. Looking at the leases is where you'll see hidden fees like pet fees or carports, or some have like insurance policies, but insurance policies are one that can be added to the rental arrearage owed as long as it's a set standard charge. But like utilities as a set standard charge falls into the utility portion. Yeah, so this is just verifying the income, just making sure that the name is on there as well as the gross income amount. Some documents you'll receive will like only show the net income, and you may have to ask for like more so you can see the gross income portion. And then any of this will be imported into the CERA worksheet into the income portion. And then if they don't have income, like there is the self-declaration of zero income that can be accepted if they can't provide proof of no income, which proof of no income, I've seen it being like a termination letter from a job or anything like that, if they haven't been able to like collect unemployment or anything. And then the last document is going to the end of, after you have the worksheet done, you're going to either do a settlement or a COD. As like in our position producing the worksheets, we don't do CODs. It would be sent to the legal counsel for either the tenant or the attorney, and they can complete a COD for the file, basically outlining the terms of the CERA and that they're going to agree to waive late fees beyond $450 and the court cost in excess of $150, and that by participating in this, they're going to accept the payment and like not evict the tenant on a non-payment case. We also do have settlements, which you can fill out. We actually, so there's two different settlements that are filled out. One is if the tenant, if the landlord participates, and then one is if the landlord does not participate. So these are just our settlement statements. This is one if they do participate. The difference in using a settlement statement versus a COD is if it's in active court proceedings, then it's going to receive a COD. But if you're catching the case before it's in court and it hasn't been filed for an eviction, then you're just going to use the settlement statement. And the way you find out usually like where it's at in the proceedings is in the portal itself. It tells, it gives tenants the option to fill out where the case is at, and they can click if it's in an active eviction proceeding and if they're in court. And so you can determine that way whether you're going to send the worksheet out for a COD or you're going to complete a settlement. And then when filling out the settlements, just the date it was prepared, landlord name, tenant name, date of the lease, which is why you need to have the lease to at least determine some of these things, since this is a legally binding statement. Property, where it's located, the date they received the documents we have. So it can be either the date the demand for possession, notice to quit was given, or like the day they received a court summons. So this is where you're going to put the amount of unpaid rent that was owed. And then down here, the amount of rental assistance. And then the rest of the three just determines the payments that are going to be made, like the payment for back rent, when it's going to be paid, who's paying it. And then this section is for rent moving forward, how much is going to be paid, what months, beginning when. And then if the tenant does have a tenant portion for either rent that went over or pet fees or anything like that that wasn't assisted with, just saying that the tenant will pay the landlord. And yeah, so actually when submitting the application, both the landlord and tenant are signing. It says there's like a portion that they're agreeing to this settlement statement when it's issued. So then this would just be sent and they don't have to sign it because they already signed initially when submitting the application. And so yeah, those are the documents that we're going to see with the CERA program. Are there any questions?
Awesome. Thanks, Gabby. That was amazing. If there are no questions, then I'm going to move into the workflow. And so I'm going to share my screen. Hopefully this helps you to understand how this whole process will work and how your role will kind of play into the movement of these applications and approving them. So again, this might change as we get the amount of access to the portal that we should have. Why wouldn't it let me play the session? Well, there we go. So as you can see here, and this is both the paper application process and as well as the portal application process, so you can have a clear understanding. So if a tenant submits a paper application, they send it to Hawk. Hawk will upload the paper application into the portal, and then it will be assigned to the Hawk assigner. Hawk will assign it to either keep it internally to Hawk or assign it over to SOS. That again is decided, one, how many applications each organization has at any given moment, and then two, back to what Shana was saying earlier, whether or not it is been previously funded by EDP. So that's the paper application. If the tenant submits directly into the portal, same thing, it goes straight to Hawk first, and then Hawk decides whether they keep it within Hawk's organization or whether they send it over to SOS. I'll get to the SOS workflow in a second. So if it stays into Hawk, it goes to the assigner reviewer. We did decide that everyone is going to get assigner privileges so that we can hand off or or pass on the application to the next step. So it is important that you follow this workflow because this is what's going to determine what the next phase is after you've completed the application, okay? So everyone will have assigner rights, but then everyone will also have a priority role. So after the main Hawk assigner assigns it to the reviewer will look at the documents and we'll make sure it's all there. So that's similar to what Gabby just said. If my cursor keeps disappearing. Okay. So if they get it and they look at the documents and it really does disappear and all the documents are there. Then you go, are all the documents accurate and complete? Awesome. Then it goes over to check HMIS for EDP. Well, again, work out exactly who is the one that gets that. And then once it's checked for EDP, it's assigned to a processor, and that's where they will then take it next to the finance person, and then a check can be cut, and that particular case can be resolved. If they don't have all the documents, then, sorry, this toolbox is in the way. Then you would have to reach out to the tenant to make sure and to follow up to make sure that they have the documents or to access or support them if they don't know exactly what you're meaning in the documents or the missing areas. Then you would have to upload those new documents, then review it again to make sure that document is correct. And then once it's completed, you pass it over to whoever is going to be checking it for the EDP and then assigned to the processor. And then, sorry, I'm trying to go to the next slide. The processor, let's see if, I think we're missing a slide. Sorry, y'all. Can you see the share? Can you still see my shared screen?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I think the slides are a little out of order, so bear with me, but you'll get this. We're gonna send this back out to you so that you can see in more detail. There we go. Reach processor. Sorry, y'all, this might need to be edited, but basically we were going to try to show you what the process is for the financial side of once it's processed, but we'll get that slide to you. So this slide right here shows what happened. Oh no, this is what I was, okay, here we go. So this is the financial one. So once it's assigned and entered to check to see if it has the EDP stuff, enter the data, the processor will get it, and then they'll enter the data into a MR spreadsheet. Not everyone will have access to this MR spreadsheet because this is the sheet that we are going to turn into the state. And so we need to make sure that it's completely detailed and exactly in the way that MR is asking for it. So once the finance person has checked all of that and all of that is good, then it will be, a letter will be sent to the tenant and the landlord confirming that their application is completed and that all the documentation is there. It'll also be giving them the award amount and how much money they should expect. And then the processor will have to print any backup materials and connect it to that MR spreadsheet. So MR is very rigorous, and they want to make sure not only how much money we're giving to folks, but they want that supporting financial documentation. We are maintaining that processor role is only a processor approver, our leadership staff at the organization. So manpower folks, you don't have to worry about this step, but it's just important for you to know because it connects directly back to the documentation review. Again, if those financial documents aren't there, as Gabby already spoke to, then we can't prove that we use this money with Fidelity. So those documents are backed and attached to a file so that we can make sure MR knows that we dotted all our I's and crossed all our T's. And then the Hawk financial team gets those supporting documents. They cut the check, right? And then the check is sent back to the processor, or the notification that a check is approved is sent back to the processor and approval, and it's sent to the tenant or the landlord, whomever is supposed to get it, and the utility company, because these funds support utilities. Are any questions about the Hawk process? And I can't see everyone, so if you have questions, just feel free to unmute yourself and jump in, and then Shayna, you can answer. Awesome. So if SOS, and Sharon or Rhonda, I actually haven't looked at the SOS one in detail. Do you want to talk about it? Because I don't want to mess it up.
It's just like the Hawk one.
Oh, well then there's no difference. With the SOS, it goes to the assigner reviewer, you review it, you make sure all the documents are complete. If not, you have communications with folks, you restart the process, check for EDP. If EDP is there, then again, ideally SOS won't be getting EDP ones, but if it is there, then we'll have to figure out and problem solve how to make sure the right person is checking for the EDP and make sure that's in the ledger. It's assigned to the processor. The processor reviews, they enter it into the data MR sheet. Again, that's the leadership role at SOS. Then the letter is sent to the landlord, letting landlord and tenant, letting them know how much money they receive. Backup materials are included in the file so that can be maintained for the MR spreadsheet. Check is cut and emailed to the tenant and approved. So it seems a little complicated right now, but I think once we get into the process and we have access to the portal, it'll be okay. Are any questions, comments, concerns?
Morgan, I do real quick, and I know we had several discussions, but regarding internet.
Yeah, we don't have that process yet, so I will be able to provide that, folks, hopefully soon.
Okay.
Are there any other questions?
Hey, Morgan, I have a comment real quick.
Yeah.
I just want to say thank you to everybody who's here. This is a lot of information. So when you guys have questions or if you feel unclear about anything, just please ask. I had the same conversation with Yvette the other day about not feeling crazy about it. It's a lot of information, and coming into housing, I didn't know anything either. And so it's going to be a big learning curve for everybody. So we're all here to support each other. So yeah, just reach out. I'm more than happy to answer questions. I know Shayna is, and so is Gabby too. So yeah, just let us know.
Thank you for that, SJ.
I have a question. It isn't regarding to the actual process, but going back to the required documents. So I know this is very rare. I came across a client that came from McKinley. McKinley had a batch applications that went straight to MISTA. They didn't go through Hawk to do the EDP process. So I don't have the worksheet for them. I went over this with SJ yesterday. They ended up zeroing out so I can do that. But just in case, if someone else comes across a batch application and they do not have the worksheet to break down where the payments were processed and giving to, how would someone go about that process? Maybe that's for Gabby, if she's still on. Like how, if we don't have that CERA worksheet, I mean, not CERA, but EDP worksheet for that batch application.
Shayna, I think this is also your wheelhouse too. I wouldn't know how to problem solve that either.
You know what? I haven't thought about that. I'm not sure. I think that's something we probably need to discuss on Monday.
Sounds good. I'll add it to the agenda.
Mm-hmm.
And that may be a question for Mishta as well. How do we troubleshoot those? I'm assuming the information isn't in HMIS.
No, nothing's there for her at all.
Yeah, that might be a Mishta question that we have to shoot up to them. How do we, when we see those?
Okay,
How do they want us to process?
Thanks for bringing that up.
And I know this is just a bigger question too, Morgan. I just was checking. We only have one person who now has access to the portal, staff person. The others do not yet have that. Is there something that we need to be doing in order to ensure their access?
Yeah, I sent out an email to the full group to report back to us who doesn't have access and give details so that we can send it up to MISTA. I haven't received anything yet back on that. So as soon as you all do that, we can send it up to MISTA and follow up.
All right.
Any other questions? Okay. The other thing on our agenda, I thought we're going to have more information on was some of the folks on the call had a meeting with DTE in hopes that we can help to market this program a little bit more widely to community members so that we can get funding and stability to folks a little bit sooner. But what we learned is that a lot of what we need to do is get this access to the portal. So there's not much update we can give to you from the DTE conversation, but we do hope to partner with them closely moving forward. Once we can make sure that we're not marketing to folks and just causing more frustration because we can't see the applications anyway. So be patient with us, both in regards to getting the portal information. Please do submit to your direct supervisor what your access issues are. It takes MISTA a minute in order to get back to us. So the sooner you submit what your access issues are, the sooner it can be sent over to OCED and the sooner we can pass that up. As always, I'll be sending out the content from the training today, and we'll be posting the training online for folks to be able to go back and review as needed. But before we close out, just want to see if there's any more questions, comments, concerns. Don't ever feel like there's a stupid question or an insignificant concern. What we know and how you're feeling is what helps us to be able to create a really great program locally. So feel free to share if you got something. If you don't, Andrea, share away.
Hi, so I just wanted everybody to know that I called legal services and I heard the recording for the CERA program on the phone.
What now?
Yeah, legal services.
Uh-huh.
Legal aid, they have the recording for people that's having eviction issues. They have the recording for CERA on the recording. You know, while you're holding on the phone, the recording is giving the information for this program.
guess I still don't understand. What do you mean recording?
The voice record, you know, when you're on hold, you
Yeah.
call a number and it may say, yeah. So it's on there now. So that's pretty good.
Okay.
Do you think they're going to reach out to the unemployment to do something similar?
Yeah, so ideally, again, we want to be able to market this more largely. That's literally what the DTE meeting was about. But the fear is we do that, people submit, and if we can't see it or can't help troubleshoot when they're going wrong, it's just creates issues. There are multiple applications from folks in the portal because of that, because we can't really help direct people. So yes, ideally, we would love to have this information spread far and wide and on everybody's recording and hold the message. But until you all have the right access, I just don't want to frustrate folks in an already stressful time. Any other question, comments, concerns? Okay, again, I think please get that access issue information to your folks so we can pass it on up. And thank you all for being here and for doing this work and for trying with us. We know about as much as you do at this moment, if you can't tell. Okay, thanks everyone.
Bye.
Bye, everyone. Have a good weekend.